It looks like we are live now. Hi, thank you so much for joining this webinar about AI detection tools by PlagiarismCheck. I'm Garrett, head of product at PlagiarismCheck, and today with me is Natalie, language analyst who has been working with natural language processing for a while and helped us to create our AI detector. This is our first webinar in many years, so please bear with us if something goes not as it usually goes on the webinars that you attended earlier. Our goal is to provide you with the most meaningful and helpful information without those trivial things that you can find throughout the internet. So first, we will talk about AI generators and their current capabilities, their influence on education in good or bad way. Then I will ask Natalie to tell about our journey in developing AI detection tool. And afterward, I will show you how this tool looks like, tell how to get it for your institution, and tell a little bit about our roadmap on how to improve it. After the webinar, we will send you a quick 4-question survey. We would appreciate your feedback in terms of what to improve in our future webinars. And also there you can ask questions that were not addressed during this presentation. However, the majority of questions that you asked when registering for our webinar, we will address them during our speech. With all being said, let's start. AI generators in a nutshell. So ChatGPT and other generators are based on models that trained on huge amounts of data. When AI generators create a response, they calculate the probability of each next word in a sequence based on the input context. For example, for a sentence, London is the capital of, the ChatGPT and other AI generators will generate the ending of this sentence as of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom, or of England, because they are the most popular. However, human thinking is much broader than AI generating capabilities. So human can say London is the capital of English tea, or London is the capital of European finances. Also, the ease and speed of AI generators opens the door to improving productivity and asking AI generators to optimize the routine, solve a lot of tasks, and get your questions answered. However, it also leaves a room for manipulations and dishonesty, including academic dishonesty, and we will address this as well in our presentation. A few words about how AI generators can be helpful for teachers. You probably read a lot of articles about how to use ChatGPT and other tools, and most likely you even use them. So I'll be brief here. So it can accelerate the teaching process and learning process. Using AI generators, you can plan your lessons much faster, literally in seconds. You can create unique and personalized assignments based on student skills. You can create plenty of content very fast. This is a good tool to create a lot of content. You can summarize, you can explain, you can translate, you can do a lot of interactions with text. And of course, you can get your questions answered in many ways better than current answering questions with search engines like Google, because ChatGPT understands your context. So it provides you with more relevant replies. Students also can benefit from AI generators. It can accelerate their routine as well. For example, students can ask ChatGPT to explain the instructors that were given to an assignment, or to create a plan for an assignment to understand where to start and how to proceed. Or students may ask ChatGPT to create a list of sources for research. However, here students should be careful, because in many cases, ChatGPT can just make up sources and they don't exist. So all sources that ChatGPT provides should be checked accurately. Or students can get through the writer's block when they don't know how to start an assignment. They can ask ChatGPT to provide first 5 sentences and give certain instructions that they were given in this assignment. And ChatGPT will quickly provide these 5 sentences, and a student can just be inspired by these sentences and paraphrase them, or just copy paste them in an assignment and continue working on him or herself. However, on the other hand, AI leaves another question about, is it a shortcut for a student? This is another way how students can complete assignments without actually completing them. First, we had blunt plagiarism, like copy pasting. Then we had copying and paraphrasing. Then we had translating text from other languages and submitting them. Then we had asking someone else or paying to someone else to write a paper on behalf of a student. Now we have AI. Why students try to use these shortcuts? The reasons are still the same for plagiarism and for AI generators. Students may experience pressure to succeed from parents or from other people who expect them to have higher grades. It can be lack time of or motivation, which I believe everyone in this room experienced at least once in our lives. It can be assignment difficulty that does not correspond student skills, or it can be low risk of being caught. When a student knows that the value of using a shortcut is much more beneficial than having potential consequences of being caught. And it also can be peers' influence. For example, if a student sees another student who uses these shortcuts and gets higher grades and is not being caught, this student can say, why shouldn't I do the same? Let's talk about if AI content is plagiarism, if we should address AI content as plagiarism. It is not plagiarism in a human understanding, like classic understanding of plagiarism, because it doesn't take significant parts of text from sources. It takes tokens like words or subwords, which are just small particles of a sentence. This type of plagiarism is almost impossible to achieve by a human because it requires a lot of time and effort to complete, even for a short essay. From the human perspective, this kind of plagiarism would be called paraphrasing because it requires a student to understand the general idea and then simply put it in own words. Machine does this in seconds, and student can just copy paste this result. But the main problem is that student did not commit to creating this paraphrasing. So we should address AI content as AI plagiarism. And another thing about AI plagiarism is that it is always conscious, because this is an act of copying and pasting the text that wasn't written by a student. However, not all students understand that this is the same way of cheating as plagiarism, and they just think that this is some kind of a new cool feature that can help them to complete their assignments faster. So students need to be addressed that plagiarism and AI plagiarism has the same consequences. So how big is the problem? You probably read a lot of articles about the ChatGPT past medical history, law, and other kinds of exams. But is it capable to write any kind of text and pass any kind of exam? No, at least for now, because the technology evolves very fast and we see it in our days. And AI-generated text can be visible in many cases, even for a human eye, because it contains some limitations in terms of repetitive content, as the model is limited by a certain number of words it can use to create a response. It can have contradictions, and in many cases, you can notice broad or vague statements. When ChatGPT was launched, some solutions started to surface, addressing the market's need to detect AI, sometimes at any cost. However, inaccurate ways to detect AI-generated content led to many false positive results, which were highlighted in newspapers, and you probably read about them as well. And it also helped to appear who knows how many false negative cases. By false positive, we understand that a student's writing was flagged as AI-generated text, which has harmful consequences for a student. And by a false negative, we understand that AI-generated text wasn't flagged as AI-generated text and passed as human-written. Besides existing AI detectors, they may reuse the text that you ask them to check. One of them even states this in their terms and conditions. So here is a citation. Contributions, which is the text that you ask a detector to check. Contributions may be viewable by other users of the site and through third-party websites, which means that the text that you upload to AI Detector to be checked may be partially, probably, shown to other users that ask some very similar request. And it causes a situation when the text written by a student can be shown to the persons who are not supposed to see this text. Now, after we talked about other solutions to detect AI in student submissions, I will ask Natalie, language analyst, to share with you our journey of creating the most accurate AI detector. Natalie, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So I'll throw some light onto how we handled AI content detection. So first of all, when the ChatGPT crisis rolled out, we immediately thought of our already existing tool called Fingerprint. So this is essentially a style detector or authorship verification feature that we have had for a while now. It is based on the latest research in stylometry, and it uses the user's input data, for example, academic papers. So it has to learn first. While learning, the fingerprint assesses the author's individual writing style according to 8 distinct criteria, and then creates a style profile for each user so that the following submissions are compared to this profile. If the style of the document is consistent with the profile, so we confirm that it was written by the user, or otherwise we flag it for possibly being written by someone else. So this solution was pretty effective at spotting cases of ghostwriting, cross-language plagiarism, student collusion, and so on. So we thought, why not give it a try with ChatGPT texts? As ChatGPT texts would definitely have some style peculiarities, and perhaps Fingerprint would even be able to catch them. So we created a user profile which was trained on ChatGPT texts, and then we created a profile for a generic human writer, which was trained on human written texts. Now we could compare each new text with these two profiles and find out which style pattern the text resembled more. And like, for example, it could be more similar to AI, then it would probably be AI text, or it could be a human text if it is similar to a human profile. And then we incorporated this result to a similarity report. Of course, this classifier was not perfect, and after all, our human profile was trained on a variety of human samples with various styles. So it was the task like of creating a generic human writing style profile like for all humans, so which is kind of a far-fetched thing. And we also should remember that ChatGPT could adopt and still can adopt various writing styles depending on the prompt you give it. For example, you can ask it to be formal or sarcastic or serious or lighthearted, whatever you want it to be. Nevertheless, this model was already production ready, and it allowed us to achieve 70% accuracy on our results, which is already a very good result for this non-trivial task. At the same time, it had certain limitations. For example, one could check only texts that were longer than 3 pages. Otherwise, the accuracy would fall dramatically because we would simply not have enough text to draw any conclusions about the style. This would also be a whole text verdict, so it's either AI or human. We couldn't detect which particular sentences or parts of text were generated by AI. And while like it would work for whole text, for all human or all AI texts, but it wouldn't work for texts which were partially generated by AI or if a human edited the AI text. So we had to find something different then. Also, while this model was pretty accurate with ChatGPT texts, and it showed even higher accuracy than 70%, it still produced some false positive results when the model thought that a human text was an AI text. So we understood that this, like it's hard to rely on such results in the actual classroom. So we continued our research. And so we understood that it would be a marathon rather than a sprint. So while we were devising our forthcoming solutions, more advanced solutions, we decided to upgrade our fingerprint model as well in the meantime. So we fine-tuned the model to better catch distinct style characteristics of both ChatGPT and human texts. And this allowed us to achieve the amazing 90% accuracy. Also, we lowered the minimum threshold for acceptable text length, and we incorporated the probability score into the similarity report. Now you could see not only the verdict, like likely human or likely AI, but also you could see how sure the system was of it. So it could be 60% probability or higher or lower, so on. So with the positive outcomes of this model, the gains that we've had was the higher accuracy. It could also process shorter texts, and it started showing the probability score, which gave the user more information about the text. At the same time, there were still limitations. We still showed a whole text verdict, and we required at least 2 pages of text for reliable results. So not 3, but still 2 pages, and it's quite a lot. So as always, we strive to give our clients the best possible solution on the market. And so we had to find different approach that would allow us to first check short text samples without the need to set up any minimum. We also achieved 95% accuracy of results. And we wanted to identify specific sentences that were generated by AI as opposed to a whole text verdict. So before we move on with this model, so we should consider some, limitations or problems that we could find out when we develop this model. So for example, you remember that we wanted the system to work on sentence level. Now let's ask ChatGPT to generate a random sentence. So I did it beforehand, but still, so when I asked ChatGPT to generate a random sentence, it generated sentence, "The cat sat on the mat." Somewhere at the back of my mind, I expected that ChatGPT would write this sentence, and so it did. And to be honest, that is something I would produce too if I was not trying to impress anyone with my creativity or if I didn't think too hard. So how can we recognize who exactly wrote that sentence? Was it me or was it ChatGPT? So both sentences would be grammatically correct, and there is not enough information in these 1 or 2 sentences like to draw any conclusions about the style patterns. And moreover, large language models mimic human language, and they do it very aptly. And ChatGPT or GPT 3.5 is a really good language model. So this could be both AI and human with the same probability. So how can we achieve any reliable results with the short samples like this? We move on, and before we just dwell on specifics, we should recollect that large language models are statistical, and they will generate the most probable sequence based on the previous context. Since they are aimed at generating natural language, human language is the control here. So there is a metric in natural language processing that is called perplexity, which shows how well the language predicts, how well the language model predicts the next sequence. So essentially, this shows the quality of the language model. So a good language model will predict a sequence with the highest probability, and perplexity is the inverse probability of a test set, and it is normalized by the number of words. So the lower the perplexity, the better the model predicts the next word. So here is the formula, if you're comfortable with formulas, and here are a couple of examples. A sentence, I always order pizza with cheese and mushrooms, is an example of a very predictable and normal text, and it has high probability and low perplexity. Whereas the sentence, she said me this, is an ungrammatical sentence, and after vowel chaining is just an example of word salad, is just a fake sentence which doesn't make much sense. So both of these sentences would have low probability but still high perplexity. Okay, so if a language model generates high probability samples, and those are very similar to human texts, won't they have the same perplexity? How can we tell one from another then? So for example, if you ask ChatGPT to name a fruit, it will name apple, and just as many people would do. I would say even most of the people would do. However, we as humans can also be spontaneous and creative, and we can name a pineapple or a dragon fruit or a banana or any other fruit to your liking. The same with the next example, like I picked up the kids and dropped them off at. So the possible endings are school, the park, home, and daycare. So these are the most probable ones, and these are the ones that a large language model would generate. But at the same time, we as humans could end the sentence with Met Gala red carpet, or we could simply make a spelling mistake in a word, and this would already affect, so this variation is less likely, but it is still possible and it makes some sense, especially in certain circumstances. And this shows that this will affect the probability of the words, and this will affect the overall perplexity score of this sentence. So what I am aiming at is that, ironically, human speech has higher perplexity and lower probability than machine-generated language. And moreover, it is not homogeneous, and it varies from one sentence to another. So this is the information that we can use to try and build our AI detection model. Have we achieved our goals? Yes. Essentially, our perplexity model gave us what we, and most importantly, our clients were looking for. So we achieved 97% accuracy on short test samples. So it's like an amazing 97%. We no longer need to set the minimum text length. Of course, we do set certain minimum text lengths, just as we do for plagiarism detection, because we won't check like one word, 2 words. We recommend starting with 3 sentences just to make some sense out of it. But still, it's much less than 2 or 3 pages. Of course. So now we can highlight specific sentences that could have been AI generated, and we can do it with high precision. Yet we are often asked some questions, like, for example, how can we rely on a solution that has only 90 to 97% accuracy? So it is important to understand that humans can still write some sentences which are very close to AI style. And at the same time, large language models generate increasingly human-like texts. Sometimes it will be impossible to detect who is who, and there will always be false positive and false negative results. And that is perfectly normal. So that's why we label our predictions as likely AI or highly likely AI, for example. And we also provide the AI probability score for the whole text for your reference. So we provide a sentence by sentence report, and then also the overall probability, which is calculated for the whole text. And it's not counted from sentences which were marked as AI, but is generally assessed the whole probability. So just as with plagiarism detection, it is important to review each case individually. and you should consider various factors before making any serious decisions that will affect the student, of course. Another point which is often argued is that students will eventually learn how to circumvent AI detectors, and we can claim that they have already done so because there are plenty of YouTube videos out there teaching them how to fool AI detectors. For example, they can run the ChatGPT text through a paraphrasing tool, or they can ask ChatGPT to generate text with higher perplexity. And we think that this is perfectly normal because this is in the student's nature to try and fool the system. But our job is to support academic integrity regardless of what they invent. So we put a lot of effort into research, and we try to update our software accordingly as soon as any trick like that appears. So we constantly research them too. So another point is that there are a number of large language models out there apart from ChatGPT or the other, like GPT 3.5, which is the same thing. There is no secret that we, in this solution, we mostly addressed ChatGPT output because this was the most hyped up model and the most popular one. But at the same time, we are going to test our model on other large language models output, such as GPT-4, Google's Bard, and others. So we want to be able to detect content that was generated by them as well. And finally, we should note that AI tools are constantly developing, and combating them can be a never-ending race, especially if unless there are some restrictions put in place that will limit the development of AI. So unless this happens, we are in for big changes connected with AI. And that is why we think that AI should be embraced rather than battled. And now Garrett will guide you through our academic integrity kit and also give you some insights into how to make friends with AI. So Garrett, the floor is yours, and you guys, thank you for attention.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm happy to introduce Academic Integrity Kit, where papers are checked for similarity, authorship, and AI presence. This comprehensive approach allows us to combat numerous ways of cheating compared to other similarity checkers. This system allows profound checking of papers for originality according to modern academic integrity challenges in 2023. Our AI detector is integrated in our similarity report, and we provide an overall feedback for the whole text. Once you click on this part, we open an AI detector report for you, where we show the sentences that are highly likely generated by AI, and we show the percentage these sentences take in the whole text. It is important to understand that this percentage can be added on top of similarity, for example. And this is another question that is totally open for discussions. Should we consider this percentage separately or together? Because recently we had research with institutions who subscribe to PlagiarismCheck about what percentage of similarity is allowed. And we figured out that for the majority of institutions, up to 20% is fine. But should it be 20% similarity and some percentage of AI on top? Or should it be 20% for similarity and AI both? This is a question that we would love to discuss with you, and we will be happy to organize a roundtable with teachers who will be interested in discussing this question. Also, another open question is how to implement these results. Our recommendation is that if you see such a case when the whole paragraph or a few paragraphs or a few sentences combined are marked as potentially generated by AI, it increases the chances that they really are generated by AI. Because when we talk about separate sentences, it doesn't make much sense from a human perspective to generate certain separate sentences and put them in an essay. But when we talk about such significant part of text, there should be some way to double check and make sure that this is really AI. And one of the options that we would recommend is to take this part that is marked as potential AI and ask a few questions based on this part to a student. And a quick hint, you can generate these questions using ChatGPT, just providing a ChatGPT this text as a prompt and asking to generate 2-3 questions. Then you address these questions to a student and you see if a student understands what is written here. Our solution is flexible, so teachers are in charge. You can decide if you want to turn on or turn off AI detector in your assignments. The results will be delivered to Moodle, Google Classroom, and Canvas very soon. And the results will be visible to teachers and administrators. Currently, we do not show the AI detector results to students, but this question is also open if you decide that students also are supposed to see the result after we check text for AI. We will add this to our product. And a few words about pricing. So we had some questions during the webinar registration about how to get this product and how much it will cost. I'm happy to announce that for the institutions that are subscribed to PlagiarismCheck, the solution will be added for free. And also for the institutions that subscribe to PlagiarismCheck until June 30, it also will be added for free. For other institutions who will plan to subscribe later, this will be added as an add-on with a very flexible pricing model. So you can decide if you would like to add AI detector to your subscription or not, or if it's totally fine with you to use a similarity checker. And this is the last slide. So just to sum up, it took for us many months to come up with some decent solution to detect AI. We tested 3 models, and the third model, which will be added to our product very soon in the nearest weeks, showed up to 97% accuracy and works with small text starting at 3 sentences. However, the takeaways that we got during this process was that an AI cannot generate with the same broadness as a human language, for example. But a human can write text in a very similar AI style, and that's why it may cause some cases of false positive results. And we believe that together we should elaborate on the mechanism on how to read the results that AI detectors show and how to address these results to students without failing their assignments for any reason. At this point, I want to thank you for attending this webinar. Thank you for listening. In case you would like to have a demo of our product, please scan this QR code. It will bring you to a short form. After you fill this form, someone from our helpful sales team will be in touch with you shortly. Or you can simply write to support@plagiarismcheck.org, this email address that you currently see on your screen. After webinar, we send you a quick feedback form. Please let us know what to improve in our future webinars. And there you also can address the questions that arise during this webinar. Maybe there will be some questions that we can group and bring people together to discuss these questions, organize some roundtables, because this topic is very popular, and still there are no like worldwide solutions on how to deal with AI. So we'll be happy to be a part of this process and share our expertise and discuss the best solutions together. With all being said, thanks again for being with us today. We hope that you had some useful insights, and we hope to see you at our future webinars.